Hello guys, this is your friend. We are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto was kidnapped as a child and raised by a female ninja clan part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Mabui, the young and beautiful, white-haired assistant of the Raikage nodded. Though she was slightly nervous, she had only become the Raikage's assistant 2 months ago, and this was the first time she had to speak with the Raikage face to face for more than a few minutes. Yes, one of our most dependable spies, a man by the codename Cook, sent an encoded letter stating that he knows the Jinchuriki and has even gone so far as to befriend him. The Yondaime Raikage was a mountain of a man. He stood at 6 feet 5 inches, had dark skin and an insanely muscular build. He was beyond proud of his 24 inches biceps. He possessed short white hair that he wore in cornrows. He was staring at his new assistant, challenging her to stick to her guns. A woman that would fold to his will so easily could never keep him grounded. That was her real job. But a Jinchuriki is useless to me. He will be rebellious, and if I have to use my own men to keep him here, there is no way I would be able to get him to fight for me. Not to mention if he sets the demon free. Mabui shook her head. You don't understand, Raikage-sama. When I said our spy befriended him, I meant he was the child's only friend. Konoha treats him as if he had the plague. So much so, that since he allowed the child to eat at his shop, his business has taken a cut of nearly 25%. He did, however, report that the Hokage is kind to him. From what his reports suggest, I would guess that he is making sure the Jinchuriki doesn't wish to leave the village. He also seems to be manipulating him into wanting to be a shinobi, but that isn't surprising. While the Raikage wasn't usually a man of many thoughts, he preferred action to words. He needed to give this a lot of thought. So, we should be able to capture, and have him here without Konoha knowing anything. Well, able to prove anything, anyways. Not to mention, we should be able to make sure he is loyal. That would make him a secret weapon. It could also lead to war. A war we could win with 3 Jinchuriki. Whereas Konoha has none. Seeing as our spies have reported that the one-tail in Suna is a loose cannon and is more likely to kill his own army than to attack ours. I can't see the negative aspect of it. I will make it a secondary mission. Mabui, send Juka, the head ninja, in here. I have a change of orders. With a smile and a nod, she told the nearby Anbu their orders. They faded into the shadows to complete their mission. Just as she was about to walk out, A's voice caught her. Well done. Let's just see how it works out. 5 minutes later, Juka, Kumo's head ninja, arrived at the Raikage's office. Juka was a tall, slim man with black hair and a beard. His head was wrapped in bandages with a Kumogakur headband covering his right eye. Is there a problem, Raikage-sama? I was just preparing for my mission. Problem? Not really. Just a change. You now have a secondary target. Your primary goal is both children. However, if that is not possible, then any unmarked Hyuga child will do. Your other possible target is 4 years old. He is the Jinchuriki of the 9-tailed fox. Juka's eyes went wide. But sir, surely Konoha would have their Jinchuriki well guarded. The Raikage shook his head. They don't treat him like a Jinchuriki, they treat him like a plague. He has no guards, he lives alone, and nobody there truly cares for him. Juka nodded. He still didn't like it. But he understood the power a 3rd Jinchuriki could bring to Kumo. Especially the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. Hi Raikage-sama, I will do my best. The Raikage nodded as Juka left his office. I hope this was for the best. 2 weeks later. God damn, ignorant fools. I hope the Raikage rips their heads off. If there was one thing that Juka hated, it was false information. The report clearly stated that the guards were not permitted to use their Byakugan during patrols. They said it was for the clan's privacy. Having quickly aborted his mission of the Hyuga, and in turn, his primary mission. He was now heading towards his secondary mission, the Jinchuriki. Juka silently made his way through the apartment window of his target. It didn't take long to find his target. He was wearing a bright orange jumpsuit, had golden blonde hair, and was loudly slurping what was identified as a cup of instant ramen. Before the boy even knew what was happening, Juka knocked the child unconscious and gathered him in a sack he had brought. Juka quickly made his way from Konoha to the drop-off point. When he arrived, he saw Darui. Though the man appeared lazy, he was one of Kumo's strongest shinobi, and the Raikage often claimed him to be his right hand. He had been personally trained by the Sandaime Raikage as a child when the man saw such great potential in him. Dropping the child and mission report off with the Jonin, Juka made his way back to his hotel to keep up appearances. He would be returning to Kumo in 1 week's time. 3 days later, when Darui arrived in the village, he carried Naruto bridal style, which was now clad in considerably more stealthy clothes, a pair of black shorts and a brown t-shirt. The biggest change was his hair color. What was once golden blonde was now a very pale blonde, bordering on white, a color rather common in Lightning Country. There was also the big, white piece of paper on the child's forehead with some symbols and the kanji for sleep. Having been told of the man's expected arrival, the gate guards didn't even ask for his papers when he arrived. Darui quickly made his way to the Raikage's office with the boy and the mission report from Juka. The Raikage read through the report with a frown. It appears as though our spies that were checking into the Hyuga were either compromised or betrayed us. Raikage-sama, the main reason for this whole thing to happen was because our spies reported that the Hyuga clan forbids the use of the Byakugan in the personal quarters for privacy reasons. However, that isn't true. The Raikage sighed. At least the mission wasn't a complete failure. I wonder what would have happened if I didn't alter the mission. Juka has never failed a mission. I'm sure he would have rather given his life and started a war than stain his record. Anyways, I see you already dyed his hair. It will do for now, but we will have to work on a more permanent solution. Any ninja, trained or not, could see through that temporary crap. We will need to keep him as low-key as possible for the next couple years. The Raikage looks at the sleeping boy before turning to Darui. The seal master is waiting for you at his office. Once he is finished analyzing the seal, report back to me. Darui nodded and picked the boy up. Hi Raikage-sama. Darui quickly made his way towards the outskirts of the village. He arrived at the small, strange house. Well, it was more like a shack. It was located on an old abandoned training ground surrounded by dead bushes and several trees that appeared to be melting. The fog that was cleared from the village seemed to condense here. Every ninja in the village avoided the area. The kinds of noises that come from here are often used in horror stories to get young ninja and children to behave. Knocking on the door, one of the craziest looking men that Darui ever had or probably ever will see opened the door. He was balding, he had white hair to his shoulders and none on his head, thick, red-rimmed glasses. When he smiled you could make out that he just one tooth, and it was more like a fang, hanging a half-inch below his lip. If you would look close enough, the iris of his eyes was a glossy black. Nobody even knew his name. He refused to answer to anything but Seal Master and had lived in the village for nearly 60 years. Hey, come let's see this bunny. Darui just raised his eyebrow. Bunny. The strange man frantically nodded his head. Like the song For the Love of Money. Bunny 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 bunny, boony. Unsure of what to do, Darui just nodded to the kid. Grabbing the child, the rather eccentric man kicked the Jonin out of the shack, slamming the door on his face. Darui could only stand there, dumbfounded. Man, if that psycho wasn't a genius he'd be dead already. Crazy bastard. With a sigh, Darui went and sat under one of the trees, resting for the first time in 3 days. 6 hours later. Holy shit, I don't even think there is a bathroom in there. What the hell is he doing? Just as Darui was about to say the hell with it and break down the door, a very flustered and angry man stepped out of the shack, all the while waving his hands like a madman and muttering to himself. I don't know how he did it, but he did. Made a key opens cage, what to do? What to do? Big man with muscles won't be happy, that is one strong bunny. Slap. Darui's slap seemed to knock the crazy out of the man known as Seal Master, if only for a minute. What is going on? Though he didn't look happy, the man told Darui everything he could. It is unlike anything I have ever seen. The Yondaime Hokage used dual 4-trigram seals to form an 8-trigram seal. Its strength is incredible, stronger than anything I've ever seen. However, there was a keyhole designed into the seal. It seems that the key will either tighten the seal if the boy is having trouble keeping the fox at bay, or loosen the seal to allow more chakra if the boy needs more strength. The seal was definitely designed for the boy to be Konoha's secret weapon. As it is, he will be able to access initial, small amounts of chakra but probably no more than one tael worth, and that would likely require a life or death situation or extreme rage. As soon as the speech ended, the crazy man started going on about bunnies again. Man, that guy is weird. I need to report this to the Raikage. Raikage's office. As soon as Darui entered his office, A could tell something was wrong. What's the problem? Darui sighed as he set the still slumbering Naruto on the small couch. Boss, the seal has a safety measure. After he explained everything that Seal Master told him, Darui knew what was coming when the Raikage smashed his fist through his desk before calming down. Just as he was about to yell to Mabui to get him a new desk, two Chunin were outside his office with the new desk he needed. As the two were leaving the office, Darui spoke. Sorry about the desk. Nodding to the two, the Raikage sat and thought. Damn it, all that for nothing. Though, maybe with enough time, the Seal Master can create a copy of this key. In the meantime, I will just have him trained so that when we can administer the key, he is prepared, perhaps the situation is salvageable. Darui, remove the sleeper seal. It is time we find out what his choice will be. However, we need to sway him to our side, if for no other reason than the risks of bringing him back to Konoha, not to mention the risks of killing him or keeping him captive. Nodding, Darui followed his leader's orders and got in a good position to restrain the boy should he react with hostility. A groan alerted them that the boy was waking. What happened? I remember. Oh yay, I was eating some ramen and then, nothing. I wonder what happened. When Naruto opened his eyes, he expected to see a lot of things. A man bigger than any he had ever seen before wasn't one of them. He couldn't stop himself. Whoa, you're huge. A smirk crossed the Raikage's face at the boy's brash attitude. Okay, so we got ourselves a cheeky little brat here. Just as Naruto was about to yell indignantly, A interrupted him. Tell me about yourself, kid. That stopped Naruto in his tracks. He couldn't help but smile brightly. It was an incredibly rare thing for someone to want to talk to him, let alone learn about him. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I like ramen, the old man, and the Ichiraku family. I don't like people who are mean to me. I want to be the greatest Hokage ever. The Raikage's eyebrow rose at the last one. A just shook his head. First things first. Darui. Yes sir. A pointed look from A stopped him from finishing. Boss. The Raikage gave the man a slight nod. Take young Naruto here to the park. I have some paperwork. Be back in 2 hours. It didn't take Darui long to understand the large man's plan when he saw Naruto brimming with excitement. The kid was nearly bouncing in his chair. This is dull, let's go kid. The kid didn't seem put out by the white-haired man's bored tone. As soon as they were out of the building, Naruto stopped. Whoa, it's so beautiful. Kumo was a series of mountain peaks, all connected by a series of bridges. The village was literally hidden by the clouds. Darui nodded. Kumo is known as the most beautiful of the hidden villages. Naruto's eyes widened. So I'm not in Konoha anymore. Nope. Will I be going back? Darui shrugged. This is dull, let's get to the park. His previous question forgotten, it didn't take long for them to arrive at the park. By the time they did, Naruto nearly had tears in his eyes. They don't hate me. Nobody stopped to glare. In fact, a few of the women called me a cute kid. That's never happened before. Go ahead and play, kid. Naruto looked hesitant. Sadarui sighed and brought him towards two kids about his age. They seemed to be arguing about something. When he was nearly there, Darui leaned down and whispered something into Naruto's ear. No matter what you do, you can't tell anybody your last name, or that you're from Konoha. If anyone asks, you're my nephew from a small village south of here. Naruto's eyes just widened and he nodded quickly. He wasn't about to give up his first real chance at having friends. By that time, they had arrived next to the two bickering children, but Naruto was still scared. Every time he has ever tried to make friends or play with others, someone would yell at him, or hurt him. Hey you two, do you mind if young Naruto here joins you? He doesn't have any friends here. The two 4-year-olds were strange in Naruto's eyes. 1. The boy had short spiky white hair and really dark skin, darker than he had ever seen. He was wearing black shorts and a blue shirt. The girl also had really dark skin, but she had red hair down to her shoulders, but the thing that stood out the most to young Naruto was her eyes. They were yellow. She was wearing a dark green shirt and black pants. While Naruto took in their appearance, they took in his. They looked at him with suspicion before huddling in a small corner and whispered to each other. Darui wasn't sure, but he thought he heard the white-haired boy say something about the destruction of Kumo, that prompted the red-haired one to slam her fist onto his head before turning to Naruto and gave a smile and nod. I'm Karui and this idiot over here is my cousin, Omoi. She pointed to the white-haired boy, still nursing his head. Naruto happily joined the two children and Darui leaned against a nearby tree to keep an eye on his assignment. This is so dull. Even through his excitement, Naruto was still nervous. Something that the two children picked up on right away. What's wrong, Naruto? Naruto looked at the ground, moving the dirt with his foot. I've never played with other kids before. What do we do? Both of the kids' eyes went wide before they both smiled. Then we have lots of time to make up for. Before Naruto knew it, he had made his first real friends. They spent the next 2 hours playing ninja, which was just a combination of hide and go seek and tag. Naruto had never had so much fun. However, the fun had to stop since two women who had been watching the whole time walked up to Naruto while he was looking for the others. Hey young man. When Naruto turned around, the women were surprised to see fear in his eyes. There is nothing to be afraid of, young man. When you find them, I just wanted you to tell Karui and Omoi that we will be leaving in about 10 minutes. When tears started to form, it nearly broke both women's hearts. Don't worry young man, they will be back tomorrow if you can come. Naruto nodded happily, tears in the corners of his eyes. But something in the back of his mind was trying to tell him that he may be back in Konoha, hated again tomorrow. With tears at the corner of his eyes, he ran off to find his new best friends. Darui saw the perfect opportunity to cement Naruto's story in Kumo. Local gossip is more believable than any forged passport. The two women stood there confused until Darui walked up behind him. He is my nephew. I recently learned that my brother died almost 3 years ago. He had been living on his own in a small village south of here. Oh my god, that's horrible. Darui nodded as he watched the boy look for his new friends. Yeah, if I had known, I would have gone after him a long time ago, but me and my brother never really got along so we didn't speak much. Darui could already see the wheels turning in the heads of two of Kumo's gossip queens, on that new piece of info. The whole village will know about Naruto in a week. It was about 2 minutes after he finished that Naruto came running from the tree line with Karui and Omoi on his tail trying to catch him. Both of their faces were covered in mud. They stopped in front of the two women and Darui, smiling and laughing. The two women walked up to Omoi and Karui with small smiles on their faces. Looks like you three had fun. Omoi and Karui nodded excitedly. Yeah, Naruto's awesome. He's really fast. Both women gave a chuckle as they shook their heads. Well, you two need a bath, so let's get going now. When Darui walked up to collect him, Naruto almost cried. Darui stopped him. How about, I bring you back tomorrow? Naruto's smile almost split his face. He said goodbye to his new friends and was about to leave when Karui and Omoi ran up and gave him a hug, smirking as they covered him in the mud that covered them. See you tomorrow, Naruto. Naruto walked away with a big smile while he waved to his new friends. On the way towards the Raikage Tower, he talked on and on about how much fun he had. When they arrived in A's office, Darui gave him a discreet nod. Naruto, it's time you come up with a decision. Option 1, stay here, see your new friends whenever you want and become a Kumo shinobi. Option 2, go back to Konoha. Naruto's eyes went wide. I can't leave Konoha. It's my home, right? Then why do I feel like I belong here? I don't know. See, can you give me a little while? I just don't know. A nodded. Sure, kid. You can stay with Darui here, until you decide. Said man just let out a loud sigh, having already expected that. A nodded and the two left. Naruto was deep in thought the whole time. Flashes of his life in Konoha, and his day in Kumo kept competing. Ramen with the old man, Darui helping him meet Karui and Omoi. Ayame giving him a hug, laughing as Karui bopped Omoi's head for thinking too much. Hiding from angry people who want to hurt him, hiding from his new best friends for fun. Slowly, but surely, even if he didn't know it, his home was no longer Konoha. Home was a place you went to feel welcome and loved. He may not know it yet, but right there in Kumo, that was his home. That night, nearly midnight, Naruto barged into Darui's room, nearly getting decapitated by the sleeping man's cleaver. However, Naruto barely noticed fire and determination in his eyes. My home is here, I will be a Kumo shinobi. Darui sighed. This is dull, it's like midnight. You could have told me in the morning. Without a second thought, Darui stood up and grabbed Naruto under his arm, said boy kicking and screaming, a huge smile on his face, at least until he was dropped on the couch that was his bed for the night. Get some sleep. Naruto never noticed how tired he was, he fell asleep seconds after his head hit the pillow. Next morning, A was pleased. Darui was standing in his office while Naruto was talking to Mabui about his new friends. Your plan was genius, Raikage-sama. Had we just asked, I'm sure he would have refused. But he is a child with no friends before yesterday. A nodded while watching his assistant re-dye Naruto's hair white with a slight yellow. A cross between Darui and the rather famous Yamanaka clan of Konoha. Darui, I'm going to remove every other project that Seal Master has and get him to start working on creating a key for the boy's seal. I need him strong enough to handle the chakra, but mentally stable enough to handle the falls of truth, raise him like a little brother, make him strong, but also make sure he knows you care about him. Darui's usually lazy eyes went wide. You want me to what? I want you to care for him, and train him. But I'm away on missions all the time. He can't take care of himself. A shrugged. Bullshit, your primary mission is as my guard. You take like one mission every 2 months, besides, he did before. Plus from your report, I'm sure his new friend's parents wouldn't mind if he came over. Plus to have him friends with the Tenka clan heir would do him wonders in the future. Darui sighed. Is this an order? Yes. Darui sighed. Okay, boss, what do you want me to teach him? A thought for a second. Start with academics, situational awareness and chakra control. See how he picks those up. You have full control on this mission. If you think he's ready for something or not ready for something, you decide. Darui nodded and the two continued to hammer out the details. Darui couldn't help but think this was going to be harder than any mission he had ever taken. 6 months later, Darui, heading towards the Raikage Tower from dropping Naruto off at his favorite park with his friends, Darui can't help but think about the recent past. That kid is a freaking genius. When he arrived, he walked into the Raikage's office to give his report. So, Darui sighed. He isn't so bright when it comes to book smarts. He often has to read something several times before he understands it. However, his determination makes up for his troubles. The Raikage took that in stride and nodded for him to continue. His situational awareness is good. He is still learning, but I have been working with him on different details. Unfortunately, that isn't something you can really train. It comes with experience, which he is getting by playing ninja with his friends. The Raikage nodded in agreement at that. His chakra control is still pretty bad, but is getting better. He can do the surface cling exercise, but has yet to finish the water walking exercise. His reserves are about the same as mine now. The Raikage nodded happily at that. As for potential, I think he will make an incredible close mid-range fighter. The Raikage raised an eyebrow. I went to the academy to ask for some tips to improve his studies, while I was talking to teacher. He saw the third-year students practicing taijutsu. He got the basics down, not perfect, mind you, but above what most of the first-year student has. He did in an hour what most kids take several months. On top of all that, he is rather sturdy. He fell out of tree while playing ninja. He broke his arm and just nursed it as he tried to find a new hiding spot. On that note, his tenant grants him accelerated healing. The Raikage smiled happily at that. Thank God. Even if Seal Master can't make the key, he seems to be one hell of a ninja. Good. While keeping up his other studies, you can introduce him to the basic 3, and taijutsu. Yes, Raikage-sama. That is perfect as both Omoi and Karui are beginning to learn their family kenjutsu styles. I believe Naruto feels as though he will be left behind. A stopped him before he could leave. Don't forget, I have that mission for you tonight. Darui just stared lazily before replying. Yes, I was able to arrange a sleepover between the two parents. Omoi and Naruto will be staying at Karui's house. The Raikage nodded in acceptance. When the two women found out about Naruto's living situation, they both volunteered to watch him when Darui was away. Naruto, just Naruto, no family name. If you ask anyone, he was an orphan from a small village in Lightning Country before his uncle found him and took him to Kumo and began raising him like a son. They also might tell you that he had more chakra than the Raikage and knew how to use it. However, he knows the truth. His name is Naruto Uzumaki, adopted son of Darui of the Black Lightning. He was born in Konoha and lived there until he turned 4. That was when the Raikage ordered his kidnapping in an attempt to obtain the Kyubi no Yoko. It was the best thing that ever happened to him. With time, memories of Konoha faded like the sands of time. 8 years after kidnapping. There was a small bandit camp, over 20 bandits bustling about, sharpening weapons, donning leather armor. Overall, they appeared to be getting prepared for their strike on a poor, unsuspecting town. Little did they know, the predator was now the prey. 3 figures stood in a tree, overlooking the camp, none of which appeared to be older than 12. The first was a female. She wore black shinobi pants with a kunai holder on her left thigh. Her green shirt hid her nearly non-existent bust. Her skin was dark, like much of the village. Her yellow eyes held a fierceness that did not belong on such a beautiful young lady. She had wild red hair to her shoulders, it was held out of her eyes with a white bandana. On her back was a long katana. Its sheath was a dark red, with a white and red hilt and normal silver, rectangular guard. Her name was Karui Tenka. To her left was a male. He wore black shinobi pants that ended after his knees, the rest of his legs were wrapped. He had on a baggy, long sleeve, gray jacket. his wrists covered in red, metal bracers. His hair was short and spiky, not to mention pure white, quite the contrast to his dark skin and black eyes. He had an identical sword to Karui's. His name was Omoi Tenka, heir to the Tenka clan of Kumo. Finally, to Omoi's left, and slightly ahead was the apparent leader. He was about 5 feet with pale, almost white hair, and his blue eyes seemed to pop in contrast to his semi-dark skin. He wore a simple short-sleeved dark gray shirt with mesh armor with black wrist guards that reached his elbows, flat black steel plates covered his elbows, and full-length black pants with steel plates over the knees. However, unlike most Kumo shinobi, he wore no weapon outside of his kunai pouch on his right leg. He was none other than Naruto, Jinchuriki of the Nine-Tailed Fox. We've been over the plan over a dozen times, we all know it. Omoi, you and Karui, you will make your way, silently through their left and right, rear flanks while I draw the attention to the front. By the time they realize there is more than one enemy, they are dead. Remember, as a Kumo shinobi, failure is not an option. The now identified Karui and Omoi nodded, each took off in an opposite direction. Less than a minute later, the reflection from their swords shining over his position told him all he needed to know. They're ready. Taking a deep breath, Naruto began flipping through a dozen hand seals. Black lightning. Chain lightning. Every bandit in the camp is shocked when a solid black lightning bolt appears, burning through a bandit before it arcs over, hitting another. One of the bandits gathered himself expertly. Run. Get some distance. Just as the entire camp started to panic, the attack jumped again, killing the speaker. When the attack didn't jump again, the camp took the words silent as the grave to a whole new level, as the others went to check on them. One of the bandits flipped one of his comrades over, looking at his chest. God damn, it burned a hole, straight through. Who the could do this? The answer was not what they expected. You have committed crimes against Lightning Country and Kumogakure, your punishment is death. Upon hearing the word, Kumogakure, the bandits began to shake. The ninja village's reputation for handling bandits was well known throughout the land of lightning. However, the fact that they came from a single boy that was no older than 12 comforted most of them. Naruto is able to see his teammates working their way towards him. They used the moment of confusion to their advantage and had already taken care of 12 out of the 32. Now that the camp was quiet, they were killing every bandit in the quickest and quietest way possible. Beheading, throat slash, or hand over mouth, kunai through heart were their most common. His job was to keep their attention on him, so he had to be flashy, not that he minded. Naruto moved his hand to his kunai pouch and pulled out 6 kunai, however, they were odd. Rather than possessing the usual handle and ring, they merely had a T-bar handle. Without giving the bandits a chance to move, he threw all 6 at the same time. They flew at an impossibly wide arc before the suddenly changed directions, entangling 4 bandits in previously unseen ninja wire. With a smirk, Naruto's hands formed a single handseal as he held up his end of the wire. Black lightning. Electromagnetic murder. A wave of black lightning easily traveled down the wire, causing the 4 bandits to drop to the ground, convulsing. It only lasted a few seconds as smoke poured from their charred bodies. Naruto smirked as he saw that Omoi and Karui were quickly moving through the bandits at an effective pace. However, he knew it would be wrong not to get his hands dirty, so he went through several more seals. Black lightning. Lightning fist jutsu. Suddenly, sparks of black as night lightning started to flare around Naruto's fists and forearms. Faster than the first bandit could respond, Naruto's fist slammed into the bandit's chin, sending him 10 feet in the air. The sound of the man's neck breaking permeated the area. It sent a chill down the boy's spine as a cold feeling came over him. Even if these men were evil, killing just felt wrong. However, it was for his dream and he would not fail. He quickly shook off any doubt and Naruto appeared in front of 2 bandits that were standing side by side. Before they could react, he moved, wrapping one hand around each of their necks as he surged forward. The second his hands touched them, any movement was halted. Choke slam. Their throats easily collapsed as Naruto slammed them down, kicking up dust all around him. Their bodies never moved. In a show of rage, one of the other bandits recovered from their mental shock and swung his katana, aiming for Naruto's neck. Hearing the attack, Naruto quickly turned and brought his hand up. The bandit's eyes showed glee as his sword was about to come into contact with Naruto's wrist. "You won't be so tough without a hand." His eyes went wide when his sword stopped dead. Naruto smirked as the bandit finally noticed the flat black steel plates on his wrists. Naruto didn't even have to do anything when the man froze, his muscles contracting painfully as lightning chakra coursed through his body. Naruto looked at the man in pity before he drew one of his push daggers. With a cold look in his eyes, Naruto slit the man's throat before throwing the same knife into another bandit's temple. With Omoi, Cloud style, front beheading. Before the bandits could react, Omoi's sword easily sliced through two of their throats. Things were going much faster now that it was pure assault. Stealth and assassination was never his strong point. His sword was too long for that. Cloud style. Reverse thrust. The bandit that was running up behind him was caught completely off guard when Omoi brought his sword behind him, stabbing the man in the gut and dropping him to the floor. With Karui, Cloud style. Serial beheading. In a burst of chakra-assisted movement, Karui covered 20 feet in less than a second, passing between 5 bandits. Just as she stood straight and swung the blood from her blade, the heads of all 5 men fell from their bodies. Overlooking the camp, an impressive group stood on various branches of the surrounding trees, each with a perfect vantage point of the bandit camp. They were 5 of the strongest ninja in all of Kumo, arguably, in all the elemental nations. Darui stood to the far right, seemingly uncaring, but the smallest of smirks could be seen on his face as his eyes followed his nephew and his friends as they made their first real step on the road to becoming true ninja. Next to him stood Samui Sakino and her brother Atsui. They both looked very impressed, giving slight nods as they watched the future genin move. Higher than the others was Yugito Ni. She had a stern expression on her face as she analyzed each and every movement they made, picking out flaws that an experienced ninja would be able to take advantage of. At the bottom, closest to the action, was the Raikage himself. He wore a broad smirk as he focused mainly on the boy that had become something of an apprentice to him, sorta. Yugito spoke. "This team is looking to be very impressive. With the talent they are showing, I'm surprised they didn't graduate earlier. I know Naruto-kun has been ready for a few years now." The Raikage snorted slightly, but it was Darui that answered. "Honestly, we've been debating that for the last 4 years. We didn't want to put Naruto in the field too early, we had to make sure of his loyalties." The Raikage couldn't help but think back. Flashback 4 years after kidnapping. Some people would think it was unbefitting of the Yondaime Raikage to be hiding in the bushes of a training ground as he intently watched an 8-year-old boy train. Naruto. Naruto stood in front of the training post. His arms were dead, his muscles screamed to stop, but he wouldn't, he would get stronger. He shot his right fist forward, blood spraying as the cut on his hand worsened with the impact. 992. Just as his fist returned to its position, his left shot forward. 993. It took him nearly a minute to finish the last 7 punches. After finishing, he began limping towards the corner of the training ground, bringing notice to his bloody feet. Raikage. The kid sure has a lot of tenacity. I wasn't sure if Darui was just exaggerating. He's probably done now. Either way, that is impressive. 1,000 push-ups, 1,000 sit-ups, 1,000 squats, 1,000 kicks, and 1,000 punches, that is a hell of a workout. Grr. 4. The Raikage turned back around and was shocked when in the middle of the field was Naruto, curling a makeshift bar made by a metal pipe with a large boulder tied to each end. With a smirk, he stepped out from his place in the bushes. Without warning, He began charging, his fist back for a hard right. Naruto's eyes widened to comical proportions as he forced his tired body to move. He barely managed to dive. Naruto looked at A with respect and a little fear. Your real training starts today, Naruto. Now, stand and face me like a true ninja of Kumogakure. That was the day Naruto became the Raikage's part-time apprentice. End flashback. The Raikage looked up towards Yugito. Ever since that day, I've known where his loyalties lie, and I'd trust that boy with my life. However, my village is much more important than my life. Yugito nodded. The Raikage's passion for Kumo was enlightening. Asterisk on the field. In less than 3 minutes, the entire group of 32 bandits lay dead at the children's feet. All three, having mentally prepared for this, took a deep breath before gathering the bodies to seal them away. As they were finishing, a slow clapping could be heard. When they looked up, the entire group was looking down at them. Darui was giving them a lazy smile, while the others wore various smirks or smiles. After only a few seconds, all 5 shared a brief nod before Darui spoke. Congratulations, you are now Genin of Kumo. Upon returning to the village and turning in your report, you will receive your forehead protector. Naruto and Karui jumped in the air in celebration while Omoi just had to take a jibe at his cousin. Too bad for you, that forehead protector doesn't come with implants. He was kindly met with a fist to the head for that. Naruto and Darui both gave slight chuckles at that. It was always amusing to watch Omoi get his head caved in. After seeing the success of Kiri's bloody mist graduation exam, Kumo had considered implementing something similar. However, they knew that it would do more harm than good. They may have cold-blooded shinobi but would only have half of them. Not to mention, they would be more prone to mental breakdowns and psychotic rages, as Kiri has proven. So, they implemented something much more logical. They created an ongoing mission for experienced genin to kidnap bandits and place them in long-term genjutsu. Then, when academy exam time came around, they would be placed into a pre-organized camp and be freed from their mental prison with false memories of preparing an attack on a small but heavily armed village. The wannabe ninja would have to exterminate the bandits. It was both effective and efficient. Getting rid of bandits, making the Land of Lightning the safest of the 5 great lands, as well as getting their ninja's first kill out of the way. Konoha. Hokage's office, same time. Sarutobi Hiruzen sighed deeply as he kept his gaze on the crystal ball. He watched as a scarred Chunin graded the written portion of the Genin exam while Mizuki tested each student's shuriken jutsu. Most of the students appeared to be doing well, but the Sandaime Hokage had other things on his mind. You would be in that class, wouldn't you, Naruto? I was such an old fool. He was broken from his musings when 3 of the strongest Jonin in Konoha entered. Kurenai, Asuma, Kakashi, I do appreciate you being here on time. The 3 nodded to their leader. Now then, after much consideration, and a long talk with Shikaku, we have come up with the teams. He merely slid a single sheet of paper towards them. All 3 of them nodded. The teams were well balanced and would work well. You are dismissed and may pick your students up tomorrow morning. 2 of the Jonin nodded before exiting. However, Kakashi stayed. When it was only Kakashi and his leader, Kakashi spoke. So, Jiraiya must have tracked down that lead by now. Anything. The Hokage sighed sadly. The hope he felt was the only thing allowing Kakashi to move forward. I'm afraid not, Kakashi. He has had several leads, but each and every one of them proves to be a dead end. We had a pretty solid lead that he was spotted in Iowa, but turned up false. The silver-haired Jonin's eye fell even further. If only I hadn't started that mission late, I might have been back in time and able to protect him. Wherever you are, Naruto, be safe. Once Kakashi had left, Sarutobi couldn't help but think back. Flashback. The Sandaime Hokage let out a relieved sigh. After nearly 2 weeks, Kumo's head Jonin had finally left the village, and while they weren't able to form a true alliance, the non-aggression treaty was definitely a win after so much bloodshed. After glancing at the pictures of the past Hokage, particularly the Yondaime, another blonde popped into his mind. I should go see Naruto-kun. He did very well not to disturb me while all this was going on. He definitely deserves an all-you-can-eat ramen outing. It must have been so tough on the little guy. He looked so dejected when I asked him to stay away from the office until further notice. I can't wait to see that megawatt smile of his again. He had arrived at the boy's apartment around lunchtime. I sure hope he hasn't eaten yet. He knocked on the door and waited. Nothing. Strange. I wonder if he's here. With that, Sarutobi extended his senses, only to feel an empty apartment. The old man frowned slightly before it was replaced with a smile. He merely waved his hand and two Anbu appeared in front of him. Anbu Neko, please sense out Naruto Uzumaki's location for me. The Anbu nodded and dropped to a knee, forming a hand seal. Normally asking anyone to find one person in a village of nearly 45,000 was stupid, but this wasn't just anyone. This boy had larger chakra reserves than anyone else in the village. It was like trying to find a glow stick on the night of a new moon. After a few seconds, the man under the mask was starting to sweat. Hokage-sama, I can't find him. It took nearly a full minute for the words of the Anbu to sink in. When they did, the man panicked, flaring his chakra. 10 seconds later, a large group of 50 battle-ready Anbu were in front of him. Find me Naruto Uzumaki. I want to know where he is. I want to know now. The chakra that flared from the old man had every ninja in the village looking in Sarutobi's direction. In unison, the Anbu nodded and disappeared in a blur. Little did the Hokage know that Naruto was several days away, just getting settled into his new home. End flashback. Kumogakure after graduation. Hell yeah, we rock. Omoi and Karui couldn't help but chuckle at their new teammates' giddiness. The boy had a huge grin as they sat down for lunch. Naruto was buying, so he chose the place. Like always, he chose his favorite ramen bar. Hey, old man, let me get another miso. Tyuki laughed heartily as he grabbed the bowl for Naruto. Tyuki couldn't help but think back to that day, 4 years ago. Flashback. Let's see. Bill, letter from my mother. Bill, wait a minute. With a smirk he threw the rest of the mail away, focusing on the letter addressed from the border of Lightning Country. He opened the letter. At first glance, it was the typical letter that someone would receive from their mother. However, once Tyuki put it through the scrambler, everything changed. Dear Tyuki, Raikage-sama has come up with an alternate plan for you to pay off your debt to Kumogakure. At your earliest convenience, return to Kumo and you will be given another, simple assignment in replacement of your own. This one will keep you inside Kumo for the foreseeable future. Mabui. Tyuki had to reread the letter a dozen times before he leapt for joy. After 6 long years, I can return home. End flashback. The 3 new genin sat and talked with Tyuki until Ayame got back from shopping. Naruto gave the older girl a hug as they were leaving. Man, there is no better celebration than Ichiraku's. Omoi and Karui just shared another confused look. While they would both admit Ichiraku's is the best ramen they had ever had, it was still only ramen. The look Naruto gets in his eyes every time he eats there confuses the hell out of them. It's like he's meeting up with an old friend every time. Naruto looked up at the sun to gauge what time it was. He mentally cursed. Damn, guys, I'm late for Darui's training. Karui and Omoi both sighed and shook their heads. Man, he sure does run you ragged. I wonder if his training will keep up while you're under another Jonin. Naruto shrugged slightly as he took off running. It took him about 10 minutes to arrive at the training ground. It was the largest training ground in Kumo and was reserved for him at all times. It was rather plain, as it held no trees or grass. However, the entire perimeter was lined with large metal posts, each with the kanji for chakra. They were actually seals to keep any chakra from escaping. You're late. Naruto looked over at his sensei as he scratched the back of his head. Sorry, Yugito-chan, I was celebrating with Karui and Omoi. Yugito stared at him for a minute before she nodded. Hey, Yugito-chan, is there any chance we can keep it light today? I need to meet my sensei at 7 a.m. tomorrow. Yugito's smirk was all the answer he needed. Prepare yourself, Naruto-kun. Slowly, blue chakra began to bubble around her, taking the form of what appeared to be a cat, her single chakra tail waving behind her. Naruto nodded and closed his eyes. Come on, Kyubi, let's do this. I'm going to devour your soul one day, boy. Despite the fox's less than comforting words, Naruto felt the familiar burn of the tailed beast's chakra flooding his system. Slowly, the chakra surrounded him until it formed a shroud in the shape of a fox with two tails. Don't hold back, Naruto-kun. Naruto merely popped his neck before he charged forward, sending his right fist forward. That evening, a sensual and pleasure-filled voice sounded through the entire apartment. Oh God, that's good. Keep going, don't you dare stop. Oh God. Naruto turned over, covering his head with his pillow as he tried to fall back to sleep. Right there. Ah. Finally, Naruto's eyes shot wide open, anger deep within them. He looked at the clock and saw that he had to meet his team in 4 hours. No longer thinking of his actions, Naruto got up and left his room, stomping his feet with every step. Without any delay, Naruto shot his foot forward, slamming into his big brother's door, breaking the lock as it flew open. The two people in the room stopped mid-stroke, frozen in shock as they looked at Naruto. His eyes were shadowed by his messy hair. Darui looked at Mabui as she tried to cover her flushed voluptuous chest even as she was heaving deep breaths in an attempt to get some much-needed oxygen. His manhood still buried deep within her. He looked at his dark-skinned lover in apology as a dark blush was clearly visible on both of them. They could both only think one thing. Oops. Naruto spoke, his voice quiet. Do you have any idea what time it is? You two have been going at it for nearly 2 hours. All I asked was that you put up a silencing seal. Is that too much to ask? Now, shish. With his piece said, Naruto left, leaving a thoroughly embarrassed couple as Mabui lifted herself off the man below her. She was no longer in the mood. Darui scowled as he saw Mabui put her clothes on. Damn it, Naruto. I'll be getting you back for this, just you wait. After she got her sleeping clothes on, Mabui walked over and closed the door, mentally noting to call a repairman in the morning. She returned to the bed and wrapped an arm around Darui's chest. However, she didn't say a word. She clearly wasn't happy. Darui sighed. I can't believe I forgot the seal, again. With that, Darui wrapped an arm around Mabui, his hand resting on her tush, giving it a light squeeze before getting up. I need a long, cold shower now. Damn brat. Next morning, Mabui stood, stretching out her tight muscles as she let out a yawn. Her eyes were droopy as she noticed the bed was empty. That's right, he has a mission. She walked out of the room, on her way to the kitchen, her feet dragging. The aroma of fresh tea caught her nose and her eyes widened in want as she looked for the source. She looked and saw Naruto, a light blush on his cheeks as he drank from a cup and offered one to her. Her blush put his to shame as she couldn't meet his eyes as she grabbed the cup. Naruto-kun, however, he put his hand up, stopping her. No, I'm sorry Mabui. I was frustrated, nervous and tired and I made choices I shouldn't have and undoubtedly ruined the last night you and Darui would spend together until he returns from his mission in nearly 2 months. I hope you can forgive me. Her blush receded as Naruto spoke and a small smile crossed her face. Of course Naruto-kun. You had every right to be angry. We promised we would put up silencing seals from now on and we forgot. Plus, you are meeting your sensei for your test today. You needed your rest. I'm sorry Naruto-kun. Naruto gave her a smile and they both enjoyed their tea. Naruto looked at the time, it was 6:30. With a deep breath, he downed his tea and stood. Well, wish me luck. Mabui gave him a sweet smile. Naruto-kun, you are the little brother to the Raikage's right hand. The Raikage himself decided to train you in taijutsu. You don't need luck. With his confidence boosted, Naruto nodded and left, his face serious. At 7 a.m., Naruto, Karui, and Omoi sat together. Not a word was spoken, they would deny it profusely, but they were nervous. From the tree above the genin, their new sensei sat, watching as they did nothing. Well now, aren't you a boring bunch of individuals? The voice rang through the clearing and each of their heads shot to the tree above them. Standing there was the woman many call the most beautiful kunoichi in Kumogakure. She was Yugito Ni. She stood at 5 feet 6 inches with long blonde hair that reached her waist wrapped in bandages. She wore a black and purple blouse with black pants, each adorned with designs of clouds, her forehead protector situated on her forehead. Naruto's eyes widened as he gulped slightly. Oh no, not her. As you are well aware, you have to complete my test before I will become your Jonin sensei. As you may or may not know, I am the strongest Jonin in Kumogakure and henceforth have first choice of any potential teams I wish to take. I chose you, but you're not done yet. Each of the Jonin will test their teams. If they fail, they will likely be given some weak, no-named Jonin without the power to back up their title, which will likely lead to the team's early demise. My test is simple. In a poof of smoke, another Yugito appeared. Kill my clone, before she kills you, and trust me, she won't be holding back. I put a bit of Matabi's chakra into the clone, so without the Kyuubi's chakra, their chances of success are about 0, but this should allow me to really see their abilities. To prove the point, fingernails of the clone shot out, lengthening to around 8 inches. Without any warning, the clone shot forward as all 3 of the genin's eyes widened. She's fast. I'm referring to the clone as Yugito. Yugito landed right in front of Naruto, her left hand shooting for Naruto's face but his wrist bracer intercepted them. Not bad kid, you're not as weak as you look. Naruto snarled at the woman. For a cat, you can be a real bitch, Yugito-chan. Naruto didn't waste any time and grabbed her wrist before spinning and throwing her 10 yards away. He was rather annoyed when she gracefully flipped and landed on her feet. She sent him a smirk. Cats always land on their feet, you'll have to do better than that, and it's Yugito-sensei, Naruto-kun. Towards the end of her statement, her eyes glanced behind her, sensing the only kunoichi on the team. Cloud style. Front beheading. With grace that shouldn't be possible, Yugito jumped and landed on the swinging katana. Omoi, who had been charging as a follow-up of Karui's opening attack but he was too busy with his jaw on the floor. He had never even heard of someone doing that. Don't lose focus. Yugito used the momentum gained by her short ride on the blade and her foot planted itself into Omoi's face, sending him on his back, his sword several feet away from him. Come now, you 3 need to do better than that. I am only 1/5 as strong as the real Yugito, even that's a stretch. The 3 regrouped, ready to fight the superior ninja. Naruto glared at the woman in front of him before bringing his hands up. Black lightning. Lightning fist jutsu. Black lightning began to spark from his hands as Naruto prepared to fight. Naruto shot his hand forward, revealing 2 smoke bombs in his hand. They exploded on contact with the ground at Yugito's feet. The attack worked as there was enough smoke to mask their movement. Naruto threw half a dozen of his strange kunai at the blonde in front of him before he prepared to fight with taijutsu. Naruto watched through the shadows as Yugito easily danced around the 6 blades. Still slightly concealed by the thinning smoke, Omoi shot to the far right and Karui shot to the far left. A lesser ninja would have had trouble tracking them both as they weaved in and out of various trees, creating basic clones to distract her. Even as she tracked the 2 swordsmen, her eyes never truly left him. Suddenly, Naruto charged. He started with a right hook that Yugito merely tilted her head back and avoided. She hardly had enough time to jump back and avoid his foot though. However, she couldn't dwell too long before he followed up with a left jab at the same time as his right hand tossed several kunai. She actually had to move to avoid that one, stepping to the right and brought her claws around, cutting deep into the genin's stomach, shredding his shirt. However, he only faltered for a second. Anger and frustration covered his face as he brought his left hand around in wild haymaker. Yugito merely raised her forearm, taking the full force of the punch. However, if you looked close enough, you could see wisps of blue and black chakra surrounding the point of impact, causing the lightning to go crazy. So close, but you and I both know that the chakra of a tailed beast is stronger than all but the most powerful chakra. Even your black lightning is not there yet. When she looked at Naruto's face, she expected annoyance, she expected frustration, what she didn't expect was a smirk. Checkmate, Yugito. Her eyes widened when his hand wrapped around her forearm, the lightning on his hand started flaring. She was helpless as he yanked on her arm, pulling her forward, right into his right fist. Naruto's smirk widened as he felt the crunch of her jaw bones breaking under his right fist. However, the smirk didn't last long as the crunching continued until he punched clear through her head. When he looked back, a splintered log was all he saw before Yugito's foot smashed into the side of his head, sending him skidding. So close, Naruto-kun. Raikage-sama's training really shows through. Her mocking voice stopped when she realized she had lost track of Omoi and Karui for just a second and that was all they needed. Yugito's eyes widened slightly when she heard two muffled shouts. Cloud style. Crescent moon strike. Two swords seemed phase into existence, appearing from the ground. Karui followed the blade in front of the Jonin, while Omoi appeared, holding the sword behind her, both blades aiming to bifurcate her. Both Genin's eyes widened when her claws met their swords, stopping them inches from the junction of the Jonin's legs. Impressive. I was unaware you two knew the underground projection fish jutsu. This team is full of surprises. The sound of Naruto's feet shuffling as he turned got Yugito's attention and she looked up. The sound of lightning picked up as the lightning surrounding Naruto's left arm faded and the lightning around his right arm doubled. With a determined look in his eyes, Naruto shot off, cracking the ground from the force. Yugito ran through her options. She couldn't move enough to replace with anything without allowing Omoi and Karui to cut her. She couldn't dodge the blades below her as well as Naruto in front of her, but maybe. Yugito smirked as blue and black chakra covered her chest and stomach, it almost appeared to solidify. Think a patch of V2 chakra but Yugito's is blue rather than red. Naruto narrowed his eyes at her before he channeled more chakra into his legs at the last instant, giving him a huge speed boost. Lariat. Naruto's arm wrapped around Yugito's chakra-covered stomach, right below her as she buckled forward, coughing up a bit of blood. It's over. With a twist of his hips, Naruto threw Yugito right towards a tree. The impact would undoubtedly do the clone in. However, Yugito recovered and flipped, preparing to spring off the large tree as Naruto's eyes widened in shock at her quick recovery. She was only a foot from the tree when she heard two shouts. Cloud style. Downward thrust. Omoi and Karui appeared from the tree, driving their swords through Yugito's torso, pinning her to the ground. Asterisk in a tree overlooking the field. A thoughtful smirk found its way onto the real Yugito's face as she watched her clone go up in smoke. I never thought they would actually be able to do it, they showed just how well they can work together. Congratulations, you are now Team Yugito. The two sets of swordsmen high-fived as the two that stabbed her melted into mud while Naruto jumped in the air, his fist raised. Yeah, we rock. Yugito smiled as she looked at her team. At least it won't be boring. Yugito just shrugged as she dropped from the tree in front of her team. Well, I'm hungry, let's go grab a bite to eat since we finished earlier than I thought we would. My treat. The genin shared a fist bump at the thought of free food. They made it quickly to a restaurant of Yugito's choosing. It was a place called Grump's Sushi and was a small restaurant with maybe 15 tables. They wouldn't call it run down since it looked well cared for, but the building was far from new. The three genin noticed an old man in his 70s behind the counter while a little girl maybe 9 brought the only other customers their food. Karui looked at Yugito in confusion. Why is it called Grumps? Is that the owner's name? Yugito laughed lightly. Nah, about 10 years ago it still said Gramps, but the A fell and broke. Gramps is real cheap and instead of replacing the A, he found a U for half the price. It's been like that ever since. Yugito-chan. The second the little girl saw the Jonin, she ran over, jumping up as Yugito caught the little girl. She had black hair with a hint of green and her eyes were a shocking emerald color. Hello, Moriko-chan, is Grump making you work again? The little girl giggled as she excitedly shook her head in the negative. Nope, Gramps is just too cheap to hire a waitress and I know he'd just do it by himself if I didn't help. Then she leaned in real close and whispered to Yugito, but the whisper was more like a yell. Plus, he's old, I don't want him to hurt himself. The old man behind the counter started mumbling something about impudent grandchildren. Everyone chuckled at the little girl and the old man, causing Moriko to notice the three genin. Who are you? Just as Karui was about to introduce herself, Yugito interrupted. Let's grab a seat and we can do our proper introductions, we never did them earlier. The 4-5 grabbed a table near the counter and Yugito went to the old man to place their order. Moriko looked at the three genin with a pouty face as she studied them. What are you three doing with my Yugito-chan? The three genin were surprised with the little girl. Were her students. When Yugito got back, Moriko sat on her lap as Yugito started to speak. Well, let's just do regular introductions, name, likes, dislikes, and dreams, easy enough. Good. Karui, always quick to talk, started speaking almost immediately. My name is Karui Tenka, I like Kenjutsu and hitting Omoi. Omoi's sweat dropped at that one. I dislike listening to Omoi's overthinking and Naruto's obsession with training. My dreams, I want to show my clan that gender doesn't matter. Yugito nodded in understanding. The Tenka clan, they have always been against allowing females to be anything except servants, breeding stock, and seduction specialists. However, if what I saw earlier is any indication, Karui will definitely make her dream come true. Yugito looked at Omoi to go next as Moriko focused on him. My name is Omoi Tenka, I like playing shogi and lollipops. I dislike getting hit. Omoi sent a light glare at Karui at that one, but she just gave him the most innocent look her fierce appearance would allow. I also dislike my clan's view of women. My dream, honestly, I just want to find a good woman and settle down. Maybe raise a big family in our clan after changing it. Yugito nodded to the boy. It was rare to meet a male at that age that openly admitted he wanted to get settled down. She wasted no time and looked at Naruto. Okay, my name is Naruto, I like old man A. Naruto started frantically looking around before sighing. Don't tell him I said that. I also like the Ichiraku ramen bar. I dislike. Naruto's eyes darkened slightly before he shook it away. My dream, I want to make a particular friend, even if he doesn't want one. Omoi and Karui were confused when they heard the last one, but before they could ask, Yugito nodded before she went. My name is Yugito Ni, I like sushi, particularly sushi from here. I dislike arrogant people and people that think their money can buy them anything. My dream, to bring Kumo to the top of the 5 great ninja villages. After Yugito was done, she looked down and was going to have Moriko introduce herself, but the little girl was fast asleep, her head resting on the blonde's bosom. The four smiled at the scene. 1 hour later, Raikage's office. How'd they do? They better have passed. Yugito looked at A, he looked more irritated than usual. Yes, they passed, but what's wrong? A leaned back in his chair as he sighed, attempting to calm down. You were only able to be there for your team's test, so you missed the disaster that was the other tests. Outside of your team, that had to have been the worst batch of genin to ever leave the academy. Yugito's eyes widened at that. How bad could it have been? Yugito voiced her thoughts and the Raikage stood, pacing back and forth behind his desk as he began ranting. First, we had some prissy little bitch that never even showed up, she had her damned mother come down to tell us she had a cold. The Raikage was shaking at that point. Then, if that wasn't bad enough, the next team looked promising, they almost died. Within minutes one had a spear in his leg, another was knocked out when a bandit bashed him over the head with a rock, and the last one refused to get out of the tree he was hiding in. That was how Yugito's evening went. She spent 2 hours listening to the Raikage bitch about the academy. It turns out, the instructor was making up his own schedule, ignoring everything that the one set by A and the council had on it. Naruto, Karui and Omoi only did so well thanks to their outside training. Well, I feel better, Yugito chuckled slightly, now that the Raikage calmed down. So, how did your test go? I want details. Yugito went into detail on how her new team did. How their teamwork was excellent, how their abilities complement each other well, plus, the raw talent contained in each of them. A nodded at that one. Good. Do you want to grab a mission for tomorrow while you're here, or do you want to pick it up in the morning? Yugito straightened her posture as she began. Actually, Raikage-sama, I would like to get the mission now. A nodded and pulled out several files, going through each of them. After a few minutes, he nodded as he looked at one. Here, this should be perfect for your team. Yugito nodded. She didn't even bother to read it, she would do all the research that was needed when she got back to her apartment anyways. She stood before bowing to the Raikage. Just as she was about to close the door, she heard his voice speak. And Yugito, make sure Naruto knows not to use it unless it is a life or death emergency. It could result in war. Yugito thought on it for a second before replying. I'll make sure he understands the possible repercussions. Within no time, the young Jonin was back in her small, one-bedroom apartment, laying on her bed with the mission scroll in front of her and a notepad. She was wearing nothing but her dark purple panties and a large white t-shirt as she was ready for bed. She smirked. This is a good one. Sometime next morning. Yugito's apartment. Knock. Several seconds passed with no movement. Knock. What time is it? With blurry vision, Yugito stared at her alarm clock, waiting for her eyesight to straighten. 5:45 a.m. The numbers blinking back at her seemed to mock her very existence. She shuffled her way the door as she slowly woke up. She opened the door with a glare on her face. Who the hell are you and what do you want? Naruto stood there, staring at his sensei. He was feeling uneasy as his eyes drank in her sleepy appearance. Naruto. What's wrong? Naruto had a light blush on his face as he shook his head. Nothing, sensei. I was just wondering if we were still going to have our daily training, now that I'm a genin. Naruto's blush increased slightly when Yugito gave him a kind of sensual sleepy smile. However, he is positive it was supposed to be a smirk. You bet we are. Remember, it is still a secret and we will only do it on days we're in the village. Naruto nodded as his stomach began growling. Yugito gave a little giggle at his now beet red face. I got an idea. I'm going to jump in the shower. Why don't you make us breakfast? Sound good? Naruto nodded and gave her a smile as they walked towards her kitchen. His eyes kept trailing downwards to her panty-clad tush. Yugito entered the kitchen as she began to speak. I'll be done in a few minutes. The tea is in the cabinet next to the fridge. Naruto nodded as he got to work making the tea. Once the tea was started, he started fishing out ingredients for breakfast. She doesn't have much, eggs and toast it is. Without a care, he began cooking. Just as he was frying up the last egg, a voice came from the hall. You know, you're supposed to take the water off the burner once it's boiling. Naruto sheepishly rubbed the back of his head as he looked over. The once full teapot was now almost empty. Yeah, but, well. Yugito just laughed as she refilled the pot. Well, maybe next time, I'll have to cook for you. Naruto blushed as his mind ran through several scenarios that had Yugito cooking for him. The two sat down at her small table and began to eat breakfast. As the meal continued, Yugito looked towards her student. Naruto, am I a good teacher? Naruto looked at the older woman in surprise. Of course you are. Without you, I'd probably have never even met Kyuubi, let alone control some of his chakra. So yeah, I say you're a great teacher. Yugito seemed to let out a relieved breath as she drank down the last of her tea. Yugito looked at the time and cursed slightly under her breath. We're late, I should have left 10 minutes ago, so we're gonna need to hurry. She sent the younger boy a challenging smirk. Think you can keep up? Naruto smirks as he snapped his neck to both sides, a crack penetrating the air. I train with the fastest man in the world. I think I can manage. With that, they both shoot off. The race doesn't take long and Naruto managed to keep up, but Yugito did so with considerably less effort. They land in the training ground right on time. Ha, told you I could keep up. Yugito rolled her eyes. Yeah, and now you're sweating and panting. And that is what Karui and Omoi enter the clearing too. Karui wasn't about to let this go. Wait a minute, why are you sweating and panting? We can come back if we're interrupting. Naruto's face went beet red at Karui's implication, but he just flipped his friend the bird as she laughed. Yugito cleared her throat to get her new team's attention. Well, I got us our first mission. In Heikai-do, a pretty small gambling town near the border of the land of hot water. Apparently, a man has been skipping out on his debts and the owner of the casino wants his money. None of the genin looked overly impressed and Yugito gave an exasperated sigh. Come on, after the D ranks you did in the academy, I thought you'd be smart enough to realize missions get better as you progress. Each of the genin thought back to some of the shittier D-rank mission they had done while still being academy students and shuddered slightly, each sharing the same thought. Maybe this isn't so bad. Yugito and her team walked up to the Chunin team on gate duty. The man in the lead was a dark-skinned bald man with a flak jacket and he was sitting at a table with several papers and 2 seals. How's gate duty, Jay? The bald man's forehead crinkled up as he glared at Yugito. You can be a real bitch, you know that. Anyways, let's get the formalities out of the way. Yugito nodded with a small smirk and handed him 1 sheet of paper and the ninja ids of her and her genin. Jay looked at each of the ids before he placed Yugito's on one of the 2 seals. Yugito, you're up. The jonin just placed her palm on the other seal and watched as her id began to glow slightly. Good, Karui. Each of the ninja did the exact same thing and Jay couldn't help but think about how valuable Sealmaster was to Kumo. He came up with the craziest things. When Team Yugito was about a mile out of Kumo, Naruto turned to Yugito. What was that seal for? Yugito looked surprised for a second before it dawned on her. Their sensei didn't teach them about the procedure of leaving the village. Idiot. However, she didn't let her frustration show at all. It doesn't really have a name, but some of us call it a chakra scanner. You remember channeling your chakra into your id card when you first got them? The 3 genin nodded. Well, it has a small seal and allows the gate guard to make sure the id matches the person leaving or entering with it. There has never been a jutsu created that allows someone to use another person's chakra without it changing. All 3 of the genin had realization on their faces. The run to Heikai-do was almost 4 days of shinobi running, non-stop, so they were making sure to take plenty of breaks. No need to leave them tired and vulnerable to an ambush. That is where they are now, walking calmly down on of the paths leading to one of the larger villages in the land of lightning, Kaminari. However, something seemed wrong. Naruto's head was swiveling around as he got the feeling they were being watched. Karui and Omoi found their hands twitching for their swords and Yugito's face remained calm and relaxed. However, that changed in an instant. Stop. Trained as warriors and soldiers, the genin did exactly as they were taught and stopped dead. Karui was even balancing on one foot. It was a good thing too, as Yugito grabbed Karui and made sure she didn't step forward. Everyone was shocked when Yugito picked up a 3-foot branch and threw it at the ground in front of them, collapsing the entire road for 3 feet. It's an old-school Ponji trap, pitfall traps with wooden spikes, usually coated with poison. They haven't really been used by shinobi since the Second War, but they were rather effective back in the day. Some small bandit crews have taken to using them to immobilize a group for an ambush, so be ready. Just as she said it, they hear scurrying. Hey, give us all your, oh shit. They're ninja. The Kumo ninja watch as 6 men jump from the trees brandishing crude clubs and rusty blades. Yugito looked at them in disgust as they scrambled over themselves to run away. Kill them all. With their Jonin sensei's orders given, the genin moved. Before the bandits could process Yugito's words, they were dead. Naruto merely threw 2 kunai, nailing the back of their necks while Karui and Omoi beheaded 2 each in a single swing. Good job. We won't bother bringing their bodies back. Fire release, Grand Fireball Jutsu. With a single hand seal, a large blue fireball easily incinerated the corpses. Yugito looked at the trap in the road as she tried to decide what to do about it. Naruto, fill in the hole. Naruto had to think for a minute on how he would before an idea came to him. He took off running, not stopping when he began running up the tree next to the road. He reached the branch he was looking for and kicked off with all his strength, sending him straight towards the ground. 5-fingered death punch. The force that Naruto's fist impacted the ground with actually caused the ground near the trap to implode on itself, filling in the trap with dirt. Naruto yanked his arm from the dirt with a smile. That was awesome. Did you see that? Yugito was impressed, but those were the results she expected when she asked him to do it. Karui and Omoi, however, it was nothing new to them. They had seen it a dozen times when he was perfecting it. Alright, when we pass through Kaminari, I'll alert the authorities about the damage to the path. Let's move, at least there is no pitfall for a civilian to fall into. 5 days later, the Kumo ninja had taken their time to arrive at their destination. As they entered, they noticed that the town was rather nice. It had a few fairly large inns and casinos, along with some bars. However, it seemed to lack residential housing. Women stood outside the various casinos trying to attract patrons into the establishments. As they walked through the town, Yugito pulled out the mission scroll. We're looking for the Wealth Over Time Casino. Our contact is a man by the name of Saito. Naruto pointed straight ahead. There, sure enough, there was a large green building with red lettering, Wealth Over Time Casino. As they entered, they noticed that the walls were lined with pictures containing various famous individuals from all over the world. They noticed one picture in particular. Yugito-sensei. Who's the man with the Nadaime raikage? Yugito honestly wasn't sure. However, he was clearly a Konoha ninja if the headband meant anything. That's the Nadaime Hokage, Tobirama Senju. All 4 ninja turned around and saw a man as his 50s wearing a very nice suit and tie. Welcome, I'm Saito Busujima, I'm the owner of Wealth Over Time. That picture there was taken by my father when Kumogakure and Konohagakure attempted an alliance. They met here before Kinkaku and Ginkaku attempted the coup during the Second Great War, killing the raikage and nearly killing the Hokage. In fact, Tobirama Senju, the Nadaime Hokage, rested right here, while waiting for medical assistance from Konoha. A lot of historical events in the ninja world happened right here. Can I presume you are the Kumo ninja sent here for my mission request? Yugito stepped forward to introduce herself and her genin. Yes, I'm Yugito and this is Naruto, Karui and Omoi. Our report states that someone is skipping out on the debts they owe. Is there anything else you would like to add? The man nodded in thought as he led them to a large office. It had plush felt-lined chairs and a large oak desk. The walls contained even more pictures, including one of a young Saito with the Sandaime Hokage. Naruto stared at the image for a few minutes before Saito started talking. You see, at first I wasn't concerned because she was Tsunade Senju, however, I was going through some old pictures and found this. He pulled out an older-looking picture. I personally took this picture 21 years ago. All four ninja looked at the picture and saw a woman with blonde hair and a very impressive bust. However, this is a picture of Tsunade that I took just 3 days ago. They were identical with the exception of the clothing. Nothing irritates me more than having fake celebrities. It's bad for business. The Kumo team was confused. Wait a minute, so if she was Tsunade Senju, you wouldn't care? The man gave an eager nod. Oh god no, you see, my casino is the busiest in this entire town and likely most of Lightning Country. That is due to the vanity of many young ninja and civilians alike. It's all about, I'm playing poker in the same seat as Hattori Hanzo when he declared war on any nation that stepped onto his land. People eat it up, and it has turned a once small casino into what you see today. The Kumo nin's eyes were wide in realization, each were thinking the same thing. If it works, that is brilliant. Yugito decided to get back on track. What can you tell us about the person masquerading as Tsunade? Whoever it is, I believe they know Tsunade personally, because they got her attitude perfect. I never would have known, but I just hired a new guard and he told me he could sense a henge on her, which caused me to start going through my old pictures. Yugito nodded in understanding. Do you know her current location? The man shook his head in the negative. No, but they will probably be here tomorrow night. There is a huge poker tournament going on. If they are anything like the real Tsunade, they won't be able to resist. Yugito thought for a moment when Omoi spoke up. We should put a member of the team on their staff, preferably working with the guard that detected the henge. If it comes to a fight, we don't want to do it in the casino. We should figure out a way to lure them away. The owner of the casino spoke up, getting their attention. Taunton. The Kumo nin had question marks clearly visible over their heads. Taunton is Tsunade's pet pig, the fake has one too. She is usually in the arms of Tsunade's apprentice, Shizune. If you can get Taunton, she'll go after you, I have no doubt. The man's words put smirks on the ninjas' faces. Yugito began assigning tasks. Omoi, you'll go with Saito here and get a guard suit. Naruto, you'll be responsible for snatching the pig. Karui, you are to handle the ambush point for when she chases Naruto. I'm going to enter the poker tournament and make sure she doesn't notice Taunton until you've had a chance to get set up. The genin nodded and took off. Following evening, Naruto was dressed in the same maroon jacket and black slacks as the waiters. He walked around carrying a serving tray with sake. His eyes shifted over towards the woman that looked like Tsunade every few minutes. He couldn't help but notice that the other woman's face portrayed her worry. For what? He wasn't sure. Maybe we're compromised. I'll keep an eye on her. Naruto made his way around to several tables, passing Omoi a note as he passed by the guard. Omoi was wearing a rather nice black tuxedo with a dark red undershirt and black tie. Omoi opened the note as discreetly as he could. I need a distraction. The black-haired girl has the pig in a death grip. Omoi began looking around, looking for anything he could use. He catches something that anyone else would have missed. He watched as a man at Tsunade's table slipped a card from his sleeve and added it to his hand. A smirk crosses the ninja's face as he starts walking towards him. When he arrives behind the man, he grabs his arm, causing several cards to fall from his sleeve, much to the shock of the other gamblers. Sir, cheating is not permitted in this establishment. Leave or you'll regret it. The man Omoi was talking to looked shocked that he was caught. He was a rather short man in a business suit. His glasses probably cost more than any of them were making for this mission. The man stood in a poor attempt at intimidation, however, his 4 feet 11 inches stature was more comical than intimidating. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? I'm Gato of Gato Shipping, I own the entire country of Wave. I'm one of the richest men in the world. Shut the hell up and go earn your 22 Rio an hour. Don't talk to me or it will be the last thing you do. The short man's eyes widened when he felt 3 guards grab him from behind, restraining his arms behind his back as the man began to kick and scream, gathering the attention of every individual in the room. However, it only lasted a few seconds when he was thrown outside. Naruto was watching and waiting for the perfect opportunity and he took it when he saw it. The black-haired girl watched, mesmerized as Omoi dragged the man from the establishment. That boy definitely has shinobi training, the girl barely even registered when Taunton jumped down, smelling the ground as the pig went in search of something, her nose to the ground. However, the next time she looked down, nothing. Taunton was gone. Taunton. By now, Shizune's head was swiveling around at a mad speed, looking for the pig she has raised since she had found her 6 years ago. However, as her eyes traveled around, she caught sight of a waiter leaving. Just as he walked out of the door, he turned and to her horror, she saw Taunton firmly in his grasp. Tsunade-sama. Taunton has been taken. Taunton may have been Shizune's pet, but Tsunade deeply cared for the small animal that had helped them out on many occasions. As she looked at the table, she shrugged. I was losing anyways. With that, Tsunade got up to give chase, only to realize Shizune was far gone. She didn't hesitate and shot forward, much to the cheering of the other players. Naruto ran at just over half speed as he watched Shizune catch up to him. Stop where you are. Naruto smirked as he kept running. He knew Karui's traps were about to start, so he made sure to jump over the trip wires and other things. He turned around and held a kunai to Taunton's stomach. Stay where you are. Naruto's actions served to intensify Shizune's rage, but her worry for Taunton outweighed it. Naruto's blade never moved from the pig as Karui walked up behind her. If you don't want bacon for breakfast, you're going to cooperate. Naruto. Yugito's panicked voice caught his attention as he looked over, only to see Tsunade above him, about to drop her leg right onto his head. He quickly jumped to the side, but it wasn't enough. The shockwave alone sent him flying for several yards, dropping Taunton in mid-flight. By that point Karui already had one of Shizune's arms cuffed and was reaching for the other. However, her eyes widened when the raven-haired girl's sleeve moved, revealing a wrist-mounted launcher that fired 3 Senbon point-blank into Karui's stomach. The red head dropped to the ground, clutching her stomach in pain. Gah! Shizune's face was the very definition of in control. What you're experiencing is the venom of the stonefish. You will feel excruciating pain for the next 6 hours. You better get comfortable because I'm going to make you regret attacking Taunton. When Naruto got to his feet, he saw Tsunade standing over a large crater, looking at him in disgust. He also noticed Karui's state. Damn it! We need to do something and fast. Naruto looked over and saw Yugito charging towards them. The two locked eyes and shared a small nod. In an instant, Naruto was charging and Shizune barely avoided the wild haymaker. However, she saw her mentor coming right towards Naruto with so much chakra in her fist that it was glowing. That hit would turn someone to mush. He'll dodge to the left, leaving him open to my attack. Tsunade was only 2 feet from killing Naruto and the boy hadn't even acted as though it mattered. Shizune was shocked when Naruto's fist slammed into her face, sending her head over heels. She soon discovered why her mentor didn't concern him. Hey bitch! A blonde woman that both the Konoha nin recognized as a player tonight ran by, her legs slamming into Tsunade's chin. Before the Sennin could react, Yugito grabbed the woman by the head and slammed her knee into the Sennin's face. She landed on her back, right next to Shizune. Both stood slowly, slightly dazed. Tsunade sent a glare at the two Kumo ninja. They're skilled. I haven't felt a blow like that in years. Meanwhile, Yugito was beginning to get confused. Are they actually Tsunade and her assistant? I'd say she has the legendary strength of Tsunade. No, it couldn't be. Tsunade wouldn't be stupid enough to travel to the land of lightning. Yugito glanced at the genin next to her. Naruto, I'm going to take care of Tsunade. I need you to deal with the other one. Think you can handle it? Naruto just cracked his knuckles in response. Naruto wasn't very patient, so he waited until he could see that Yugito was ready, and then he formed the Boar hand seal. Black lightning. Lightning fist jutsu. The glow that surrounded Naruto's hands actually unnerved the two women slightly. Tsunade turned to her assistant. You're going to need to deal with the boy, but be careful, that black lightning is no joke. Naruto shot forward, cracking the ground slightly as he kicked off. Shizune jumped back, nearly as fast, keeping their separation the same as she began spitting Senbon needles from her mouth. Naruto easily swerved around them, throwing two shuriken at the black-haired woman. Don't forget about me, brat. Naruto's eyes widened slightly when he was Tsunade charging towards him, only to be intercepted by Yugito. I think it's you who is forgetting about someone. With Tsunade taken care of, Naruto focused back on Shizune, just in time too, as he blocks a small scalpel with his bracer. He is rather surprised when the small blade actually left a cut across his bracer. Sharp. However, he smirks as he sees a slight spark of black lightning trail from her shoulder. You shouldn't be so hasty. Lightning is the most powerful force known to man, and black lightning is even stronger. Shizune barely managed to jump back in time when Naruto went for an uppercut. Getting a slight reprieve from the fight, and Naruto didn't argue at all. She's good and she's in this to kill. As Naruto was thinking about her, Shizune spoke. Tell me, ninja of Kumo, why have you attacked me and my master? Naruto continued to stare down the girl for a moment before speaking. We were given a mission of collecting not less than 1.2 million ryo from your master, which she owes to Mr. Saito Busujima. A confused frown crossed the woman's face. Why would he care now? He's always let Tsunade-sama's debts go. Focusing back on the fight, Shizune watched as Naruto grabbed two push daggers from his pocket and gripped one of them in each hand. Now, I really need to watch his punches. Across the field, Shizune will handle your little brat just like she did the other, then we can be done with this. You're going to regret accepting this mission. Yugito sent the older woman a smirk. Really? Because I'm having a blast, not to mention my genin get to see what the ninja world is like. I mean really though, if you would only pay the debt you've acquired, none of this would be necessary. However, Tsunade only really caught one word of Yugito's entire speech. Genin. Yugito didn't answer. Instead she charged forward. Using her superior speed, she landed a particularly strong uppercut to the woman's chin, sending her airborne. Before Tsunade could react, Yugito's spinning back kick slammed into her stomach. Yugito was slightly annoyed when the woman stood as though she was hit by a chunin, not an S-rank ninja. I'll give it to you, you're quick, but I've been trained since before you were even born. Your hits are too weak. Yugito's eyes went blank as she stared at Tsunade, as though she were less important than the grass under her sandal. Without a hand seal, 8-inch claws shot from Yugito's fingertips. She wasted no time, ready to get the real fight started. Near the field, Omoi watched the two fights with interest, waiting to see if he should help either side, but both Naruto and Yugito were doing well. He looked down at Karui, who was laying on her back, clutching at her stomach, but he couldn't do anything. He didn't know any medical ninjutsu. Maybe. Omoi reached in his pack, going through several small pills and found a small green one. He placed it in Karui's mouth and forced her to swallow it. After a few seconds, her whimpering and tossing and turning slowed to a halt. Good. The sleeping drug worked. I just hope this poison isn't fatal. Back in the casino, Saito had never seen so many people abandon a game in order to bombard him with questions. Was that really Tsunade Senju? What about the other blonde? She was Yugito Ni, the strongest ninja in Kumo, wasn't she? Who were the kids? What's going on? Are Kumo and Konoha going to war? Saito raised his hands to get them to quiet down. That woman wasn't Tsunade. She was pretending to be Tsunade so that I would be willing to ignore some of her debt. A man in the front spoke up. Are you sure? That rumbling sounds like a Tsunade fight to me. It really did. Saito shook his head. I'm afraid not. A henge was detected on Tsunade. What reason could she have to use a henge? She is the most beautiful woman in the world. However, a woman spoke up, getting his attention. I heard she uses a henge to cover up her age and to hide from debt collectors. With a frown on his face, Saito began heading out of the casino and towards the fight. That's right, I remember hearing about that. It would make sense too, she's actually over 50 now. She may no longer be as beautiful as she was. Like a herd of cattle, everyone followed behind him as they made their way towards the clouds of dust. Naruto vs. Shizune. Naruto charged in quickly, hoping to catch her by surprise. His left hook met only air as she leaned back. He blocked her scalpel with his right arm as his left arm and fired a body shot. The more experienced Jonin managed to spin out of the attack, receiving only residual voltage to the side. However, Naruto was unprepared for Shizune's foot to fly up and catch his chin, sending him stumbling. The medic ninja tried to capitalize on it and went for a swipe, but Naruto blocked it yet again and countered with a knee to the gut that doubled the woman over, or so he thought. Her position allowed her to conceal her hand seals. Poison fog jutsu. Naruto's eyes widened as he was engulfed in a purple mist of poison. Gotta move. Just as Naruto tried to jump out, a chain wrapped around his leg, causing him to fall and lose some of his precious oxygen. Welcome to the medic ninja's realm. Naruto didn't have any air to retort with. In fact, his face was beginning to redden. Through the mist, Naruto could barely see the figure of Shizune, holding the chain wrapped around his leg. A smirk crossed his face. Naruto threw his two push daggers at the woman. The two blades were dodged when the black-haired woman jumped, and that was what Naruto was waiting for. Naruto's hands wrapped around the chain, sending black lightning straight into Shizune's system. With a sharp yank on the chain, the medic ninja went flying, right towards Naruto. With the last of his breath, the boy managed to yell out one of his favorite attacks. Lariat. Naruto's arm slammed into Shizune's chest before throwing her into the dirt, but the boy didn't waste even a second to see the results as he continued to run, straight out of the mist. The boy dropped to his knees gasping for breath when he made it. If he would have turned, he would have seen Shizune's body turn into a wooden log as it shattered. Naruto was gasping for breath so hard, he didn't even notice the 6 shuriken flying through the air before they embedded themselves into his back, causing him to yell out. Just as Shizune charged with her scalpel, it met the edge of Omoi's odachi. So, you were in on it too. I take it that man wasn't really cheating then. Omoi gave Shizune a smirk. Oh, he was cheating alright. Tsunade vs. Yugito. Cat Claw. Tsunade ungracefully flung herself back, avoiding the woman's claws by less than an inch. However, Yugito didn't let up and was on the older woman faster than she believed possible. Tsunade was not as graceful as she had once been. I never realized how much my dodging has suffered since my strength keeps most ninja at a distance with pure fear. However, this woman is no joke. Not to mention she is in her prime. The last swipe by Yugito actually managed to tear her robe slightly, missing the skin by mere centimeters. That's it. Tsunade was sick of being on the defensive as Yugito's claws were on a collision course with her back, which was exposed as she prepared to slam her fist into the ground. Seismic impact. The second her fist impacted the ground, The entire area for 100 yards was upturned and thrown around. Yugito could do nothing as the ground beneath her feet was no longer beneath her feet. She ended up falling between two large pieces of debris before the ground stopped moving. Yugito grunted in pain as she was pinned beneath a large boulder with Tsunade standing over her. I told you that you'd regret it. Yugito sent the woman a glare. I regret nothing. Slowly, a dark blue and black charca began surrounding the younger woman, before it solidified, forming what vaguely resembled a cat with two tails. It was around the size of a horse. With the increase of strength, Yugito easily tossed the rubble off her before she stood across from Tsunade, ready to fight. I'm going to rip your heart out. Tsunade stared at the cat, in shock. Jinchuriki. However, before Yugito could attack, they heard what sounded like crying. Both Yugito and Tsunade looked over and saw a large crowd of people, all of them attempting to rescue a young boy whom had ran off and gotten struck by Tsunade's attack. Tsunade sent a glare at Yugito, wanting to go help the boy as Yugito's V2 form dropped. We'll finish this when we're alone. Tsunade sent her a confused look, but took the opportunity and ran off, Yugito running off towards her students. She found them both looking slightly beat up, but not too bad as Shizune ran off to help her master. Sensei, she's the real Tsunade, isn't she? Yugito thought for a moment before she shrugged. I think so, Naruto, I think so. After Tsunade and Shizune saved the boy, healing him good as new, Saito walked up to them and confronted them. After a short conversation, he realized that it was in fact the real Tsunade. He apologized profusely as he hoped she wasn't mad. When Naruto gave a completely unharmed tauntaun back to Shizune, it was basically decided that all was well. Evening of the fight, Naruto and Omoi sighed in frustration as they walked towards the inn. Omoi knocked on the door and after only several moments, it opened, revealing Shizune. She looked at them with a light glare. What do you want? Omoi seemed to be struggling with something when Naruto just came out with it. Will you heal Karui? Her body doesn't seem to be getting over the poison. Shizune looked confused as she looked at the time. It's been 9 hours, the poison should have left her system completely 2 hours ago, at the very latest. Though weary, she followed them out. They arrived at a small camp near the battleground with 4 tents and a fire in the middle. It was basic but comfortable. However, Yugito was looking at one of her students in worry, holding a cloth to her head. Excuse me. Shizune's voice snapped Yugito out of her trance. Do you mind? Without a second delay, Shizune lightly pushed her way past the reluctant Yugito and ran her glowing hands over the girl. Oh, I see. The Kumo nin leaned in, waiting for a response. It's nothing serious. If you come with me back to the inn, I should have some antihistamine. She had an allergic reaction to the poison. The poison has run its course, but she is fighting this now. Once she gets what she needs, she'll be good in a few hours. When Naruto went back to the inn with Shizune, he was greeted by an annoyed Tsunade. However, after Shizune explained what happened, Tsunade merely tossed the boy a small box of pills. Give her one every 10 minutes for the next hour, she'll be fine. Naruto was about to leave when he stopped. For what it's worth, we're sorry. Tsunade shrugged. Don't think I didn't have my fair share of up missions, it's part of the job. Don't stress it, kid. You'll only die young. Naruto quickly made his way back to the camp and sure enough, Karui was doing better within the hour. The next morning, Team Yugito was packing up their camp as they prepared for the trip home. It would take longer since Karui wasn't 100%. Omoi watched as Karui struggled to close her tent up. When you came back with the pills, I almost expected more poison. You know, I resent that remark. The 3 genin jumped at Tsunade's voice. She stood next to Shizune and tauntaun as she stared at the ninja that caused her trouble. I should want to kill you, but I haven't stretched these old muscles like that in years. However, Tsunade sent a glare that promised death towards Yugito. You, however, were going to need a rematch. Yugito easily matched the glare until Naruto grabbed Yugito's shoulder and Shizune grabbed Tsunade. Shizune bowed slightly to the Kumo ninja. Take care, if we see you again, I hope it is under more pleasant circumstances. The Kumo ninja nodded and waved as they left. Once they were out of sight, Tsunade turned to Shizune.